When you come up to the CNC machine, if it's already warmed up, you've already gone through that process, I want to get the head out of the way. I mean, right now it's just in the way. I'd have to duck under it to screw things in. So I need it to go to the right. So again, with this, turn this way. To my right is now that button. And you just are pushing it to the end of the machine. You don't have to go all the way. That's good enough. It's out of the way. Now we're going to focus on the table and get our part mounted. So here's the part we need to mount. And you may have noticed that I haven't actually cut it to any other size. I haven't table sawed it to width or to length. These are still not straight or square. That doesn't matter. We wanted it oversized anyway, so I don't care if it's too big. That's fine. As long as it has a good straight edge, that's great. Now, as you can see, we have a couple of options of clamping. So in this case, because the bit is going to be going so low and the piece is not very large, I'm going to use these low profile clamps. Whereas with bigger stuff, I'll use some of these. They're just a little bit faster. So for now, I'll just lay those aside. Now, we need to put this, our axes, our direction here. I have my home position set in the upper left corner. Okay, so to make this easy, you can see in the table I have a few numbers engraved. There's one down here and one here. 9, 10, 11, and 12. These are called offsets. So these little pegs, these holes you see along here, work with those offsets. So I'll put a peg here and there, and you can see I've got another one over here, and I can put my board right in there. Now that guarantees that it is straight with the axes of the machine. So the machine is the one that drilled these, so I know it's straight. Again, I haven't cut this down, so I'll have an extra inch on the right. So what? That's fine. So in the back, I'm going to take these really low ones, and you can see on here that there's a little washer and a thicker one. You need to push that small washer up so there's a gap between them so that it fits inside there. Now, they're normally meant to go in this direction, but they kind of dig in, so I'm going to turn it sideways. Here's my other one, same thing. Hold that up and slide it in. Sometimes that can be tricky. Now, I don't want to clamp against these pins, so that's why I'm putting these in. Take your T-tool here, hold it tight against your side or your ends, and then tighten it down. Now, once in a while, if you tighten, this will want to start twisting. So that's why I'm kind of holding it with my fingers. If it twists a little bit, just undo it, get it straight, tighten it back down again. It doesn't have to be super tight, but I don't want this to move. Now, these are the ones that I will tighten, and they will, you can see that they'll clamp tighter as I turn this screw. So same thing, push that washer up, push that in. Now obviously they have to be direct across. I can't put it here. I got to put directly across. Put the other one over here. It slides right in. And tighten these down as well. Nice and tight. And these are now nice and tight. So right now this can still move because I haven't actually tightened it. So we're going to now put it here at an angle and tighten these down a little bit. So I want it down nice and flat. And again, it doesn't need to be super tight because eventually I might overcome and start moving that back a little bit. I don't want to do that. Okay, so there it is. Nice and snug there. And I grab the sides and that is not moving. Okay, now the reason that I wanted to use this offset here is because each one of these offsets are already pre-programmed into the computer, into the machine. It knows that offset number 10 is this corner right there. I've already gotten it set up. Each one of these offsets, this is offset 9, offset 12, 11, and 10. So I'm just going to put in the computer to go to offset number 10 and then load the code and it'll be ready to go. Now that we have our piece set, now we're going to go to here and get this all set up. The last thing we do is load the code, so we'll deal with that later. The first thing we do is get our offset. Right now it's set to offset number 1, and I change number 1 all the time. Offset number 1 is constantly moving to something else, so that's why I made some permanent ones. Just click on it, it kind of highlights, and type in 10, 10, and hit enter. So now you may have noticed all these numbers have changed. Now we want to double check that that is still correct. It is not hard to change the offsets, even by accident. So we're going to go to the bottom here, to this bar right here. Click on it. It says manual data input. I want to go to X0, Y0. So we just type in X0, Y0, and there they are, and hit enter, and the head will move. Now I know that that's directly in line, you can't see it, so I'm going to show you from a different angle. So right now, that head has moved, traveled, and now you can see that the bit is directly in line with the corner of that. So that's all I wanted to double check. Is that in line? If it is, then we're good to move on. Now we move on to the next step, which is we need to do our Z0. We have our X and Y, and we just checked it. Now we need to do our Z. So first thing is, this little box here is going to stay up there forever unless you click off of it. So I just go up into this little black box and click 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it takes, so that that disappears. And now I can manually move my machine. I already know my X0, Y0 is correct. Now I got to get Z. Here's how you do it. First, move the bit so that the bit is in the corner closest to you. And I'm taking my keyboard here, and I'm going to move the bit so that it's a little bit closer to here. So I'm going to go down a little and to the right. So you can tap until you're good. So it's about here in this corner. That's good enough. I pull off this little magnetic pad that's just sitting here on the end of the machine, and I put it underneath the bit. So I'm sure when the bit goes down, it's going to hit that pad. Otherwise, it's going to go right through your board. Now that it's in place, we're going to go to this button here. It says Smart Tool Setup. Smart Tool Setup. Push it. Is the spindle position over the mobile start tool pad? Yes, we just did it. Now it's asking, are you running a program with multiple tools? If I need to change the tool to something else to do a different procedure, then I would hit yes. And a lot of times I'll just hit yes. If I hit no, what I'm telling it is the one tool that's in there right now, the one tool that is already in there is what I'm using. Now that happens to be the correct tool. So am I running a program with multiple tools? No. However, even if I'm using one tool, if it isn't already in there, you must hit yes. You've got to hit yes. So I would say hit yes most of the time. What's happening is when I hit Smart Tool Setup, the blade is coming down very slowly and it's going to touch the pad. There's a very slight electrical current going through it, so when it touches, it'll ground out and it'll know that's it. Now the computer knows that this thickness of this pad is just over an inch thick. It knows down to the thousandth of an inch. So now it knows where the surface is. It takes whatever's on the pad, subtracts this thickness, and it's got the exact surface. Now the next step is to load the code. Last thing to do, load the code. It's going to go here. So right here we have load code, edit code, close it, and rewind it. We're just going to deal with load. That means put it on here. Now where I've got all these codes is on the desktop right here. You're going to go down to important G-code files. In other words, those are just files that I always want to save. One of them says toolboxes. And I've got a small toolbox and a large toolbox. This one you want small toolbox UL. UL means the home position is in the upper left corner, which it is. We set that up a while ago. So small toolbox right there, and hit open. And you'll see all this bunch of code show up here in this screen. Now if everything was set right, all you've got to do at this point is hit cycle start here at the top. If there's any problem, you can hit cycle stop. Feed hold will just stop the motor. It won't move anymore. Cycle stop means it stops and gets out of there, and then reset and so forth. But cycle start, it'll go through the whole code, cut everything out, and then it will leave the wood and go back to its home position where it is now. So all we have to do now is hit cycle start. Once you're ready to hit cycle start, the machine will automatically move and ask you to change the bit. This is a default. The bit that's in there is already correct. Just go ahead and hit enter or hit OK on the screen. It's already the correct tool. Now it'll ask you, put on the dust hood. Like I said, there's a couple magnets here that just line up, and you just slide it on. If it's not right, and flip it around. The magnets will only go on one way, and it'll slip right in there. Once you hear it lock, then just hit enter again. What it will do is it'll go down to about an inch off of the wood. It'll turn on and then start its process. At the very end, it'll stay in its position until you tell it to park the spindle. So on the screen of the computer, press the button that says Park Spindle. Park Spindle is right here, says it right there. And all that does is it moves it up away and pushes it back towards the corner, and then you can get your part out.